What do the January 6th hearings reveal about Trump's active participation in the insurrection of this country? And also, why does the Supreme Court need to be expanded so that our fundamental civil rights can no longer be tampered with? We'll discuss all of that right after this.
That Corbin and Corbin legal team fighting for the rights of the people. That father-daughter team investing in the youth when the system ain't treating them equal. Providing truth for our people, we able to reach them. So anytime you get accused for a crime and Lord knows you ain't do it, we here to get you through it. Exemplifying prudence and glorifying God, making sure you're compensated for other people's doings. Our vision is to be one of the best. We're small enough to focus on your matter throughout the neighborhoods of Dallas. Working constantly and making sure your rights are protected. A firm team of lawyers, aggressive, effective. A team that has your back in the courtroom. Two well-spoken black lawyers in the courtroom. Investing time and resources when it's evident that you were treated wrong. Now you walking out of Dallas courtroom with a settlement. Corbin and Corbin, the father-daughter legal tag team that has your back in the courtroom. Our purpose is simple. To obtain the favorable outcome for each client and glorify Christ in all we do. Our vision is to be one of the best and most...
Good afternoon, Rebels. This is attorney Chloe Corbett, aka the Duchess of Justice. And with me I have
Attorney Augustus Corbett, aka the Minister of Justice.
We are your defiant lawyers. We provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you to defy this unjust legal system. Before we get into today's topic, why don't you go ahead and like this video below? It's free. It doesn't require anything. And it shows us how much you truly appreciate this content and all of the perspectives we bring you as Black people, as attorneys, and as professionals. So why don't you show us some love below? Go ahead and hit that like button right now. It's free. We'll give you a few seconds. Okay, thank you for doing that. Before we get into it, Dad, how are you doing today?
I am doing so very well. I hope you are, Chloe. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. And I thank God for that.
Yes, I'm doing well too. This month is my birthday month. July is a beautiful month. I have a vacation coming up that I cannot wait for. And I will, I'm getting on up there in my 30s.
Oh, you'll never catch up with me.
So yes, this is a great month. July in the summer is always my favorite time of the year. But enough about that. Let's get into our topics for today. There's been a lot that's been going on this week in the political world, in the legal world, and we want to discuss it and break it down for all of our followers. So the first thing that we want to talk about today is something that has been in the news, for the past couple weeks. In fact, it's been viewed more times than the NBA Finals, which is amazing.
Wow.
Yes. And that is the January 6th hearings. Okay. The January 6th hearings that Congress has put on to present evidence against President Trump and his supporters. So, Dad, let's get into it. What are your key takeaways from the January 6th hearings in general before we get into details?
Well, in general, I think they are doing a very good job prosecuting their case and showing that former President Donald Trump is guilty of trying to inspire an insurrection.
They are. And they have the burden of proof. They have the burden to present this evidence against President Trump and all of his associates and anybody who was involved with the insurrection. So that is why they have, sent out subpoenas to multiple witnesses, have tried to gather evidence for the past couple years. They have the burden to prove this case against President Trump. And I agree too that they are meeting their burden, especially with the testimony of Cassidy Hutchinson, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But you have someone on the screen. Can you explain who that person is?
So this is Congressman Benny Thompson from Mississippi. He is the chairman of the January 6th committee that is conducting and presenting the hearing, and he's doing a wonderful job. Um, so that's who that is. And beside him in this photo is Liz Cheney, Representative Liz Cheney from Wyoming. She is an ultra conservative congressperson, but she has stood strong in holding or trying to hold Trump accountable despite the naysayers in her own party. Um, in fact, I looked at a video, Chloe, of Liz Cheney and several of the people who are trying to get her job. And uh, it is amazing how reasonable and rational Liz Cheney sound in comparison to the people who are trying to get her job. Those people were completely off the chart crazy. I mean, just off the chart crazy. So anytime you feel that Liz Cheney, ultra conservative Liz Cheney, is a moderate and rational, you know the people to the right of her are just lit. I'm losing words trying to describe how off the chain they are.
Yeah, and that's the reason, unfortunately, why she may lose her seat. I saw some emails that her campaign sent out appealing to Democratic voters, so that because she knows she's losing the more extremist conservative part of her party and
Hmm.
constituents in Wyoming. So she's sending out these mailers to Democrats saying, basically, how rational I've been. You see how the stand I've taken for these January 6 hearings. Please contribute to my campaign and vote for me.
They
So
should. I'm telling
yeah,
you, they should. And I thought I would never say this, but the people in Wyoming should vote for Liz Cheney to keep those other folks out of office, Chloe. It is. It is. I may even try to find it and play it.
yeah, she's come under a lashing from the Republican Party
She
for being
has.
rational and for participating on this committee and prosecuting and presenting this evidence against President Trump. It's a shame.
It's a shame, yes, because Donald Trump has, for the GOP, normalized mental illness. Exhibit one, Herschel Walker. He has normalized QAnon. Exhibit two, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Mm.
And he has exhibited white supremacy. Exhibit three, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and on and on and on. So those are the people now who are the face of and the people that common Republican voters want representing them.
It's 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 crazy. It is crazy. And before we get into it, I just want to let the readers know, and I'm looking at my iPad with my notes on what the January 6th committee is. So it is, the long name is the US House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack to the United States Capitol. They are a select committee of the US House of Representatives to investigate the attack on the Capitol, which was the culmination of President Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 US presidential election, in part by, quote, telling many falsehoods about it instead of conceding defeat to Joe Biden. So that's what this committee is investigating and the evidence that they're putting there. So, really, as we say in our slides, that this is their case against Trump.
That's exactly what it is. And I don't think Liz Cheney has a prosecutorial background, but she is doing a splendid job of standing strong and going where the facts have led them. And that's what
Yeah.
they're doing. I know the GOP is accusing them of partisan, bias, but I've looked at some of these, I've stayed abreast of things, and a lot of their witnesses are not Democrats. Actually, a lot of their witnesses are GOP officials and folks on the state level as well as the federal level. So it's hard for the GOP to make the case that this is a partisan proceeding because it's the GOP who are indicting Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, people who worked for him, people that he appointed, people who actually voted for him and wanted him to win and still want him, still want his policies and so forth. It's those people that are the lion's share of the folks testifying against him in these hearings.
Yes, former aides, his former people that worked in his administration who knew the ins and outs, who works closely with him. So
Yes, campaign manager
yeah,
Bill Stapien, campaign and political advisor Jason Miller, um, his own. We'll see his own daughter.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty bad when your own daughter get on national television and say, "I don't believe my father."
Mm. And the Trumps, they stick tight together. They stick together, they stay together, they've been in business together. His children have been very outspoken in terms of supporting his campaign. But hey, when you're subpoenaed and you have to take an oath to tell the truth, I guess maybe they, they
Even
didn't say
even the
okay at this
Trumps will
point.
tell the truth. Even the
Yeah.
Trumps will tell the I mean, so it's pretty bad, that what you're saying is such a lie that your own family cannot stand with you, really.
Yeah.
And, in a normal family, the father would want the daughter to absolutely tell the truth because the father would be trying to walk in truth. And so it would be easy for the family to support, the father. But this is not that type of family.
At all.
And this is not that type of father, and he's not that kind of man. He is a different breed of person.
Yeah. He is. He is. So why are the hearings now kind of in the forefront? We've had a few hearings in 2021. We had a few, I think, earlier this year, but for the past week or two, they've really been in the media. People have been watching it. Like I said at the top, more people watch a hearing than they watch the NBA finals. So why do you think that there's so much interest in it now?
Well, I would say a couple of reasons. I think the media is doing um, a great job, CNN especially. Some of the other media companies, ABC, CBS, NBC, a lot of the digital companies, media companies are following this very closely. You got social media, which really probably has more influence, especially with your demographic, than the main media. And so it's getting wide coverage on both main and social media is one reason. I think another reason is, and I hope this is true. People see the threat, the existential threat that Donald Trump and his people pose to our country. Um, I mean, this is a threat that has not gone away. We saw Donald Trump literally and his people literally tried to overthrow our government. Um, I mean, that would have been unheard of before Trump, completely unheard of. I remember back when Al Gore and Bush, had a flare up and had to do recounts and all of that. And it was tense there for a moment, but everything was fought out in court. And once the court said Bush won, Gore conceded, and all his followers, as disappointing as it was for them, they yet conceded, and there was a peaceful transition of power. Some folks even tried to get Gore to push it even further, but he said, no, in the good of the country, this is it. The court has spoken. This is the way our country works. This is democracy. I don't agree with them. I don't like their opinion, but they've spoken, and that's that. And so That's what we had then. But with this guy who is extremely narcissistic, who cares only about himself, and the crazy people that are supporting him, it's not country first, especially
Yeah.
for him. So I think people hopefully are seeing how much of a threat he is and how consequential his presidency has been to this country. And just imagine Trump 4 more years in his crowd. Just imagine that, Chloe.
It's highly possible.
It is.
The way that Biden is performing and the polls that have come out, we know that polls are not always accurate whatsoever, but the general, anecdotally, people that I know personally, and then just a general, what you hear around on the news and social media, Biden is not that popular whatsoever, especially with younger people. A lot of people of color are disillusioned with his performance too. A lot of black people. So I think it's highly possible for Trump to have another 4 years in office, or, and I saw this on another news channel, that really the one who benefits from this first, and I agree with them. I saw this on Breaking Points, is Ron DeSantis, because we know
True.
he's kind of there in the background
Yeah.
lurking, you know, trying to make himself basically Trump 2.0, the younger Trump, the slicker Trump, have the same insane views on a lot of issues, but Trump 2.0. So I think that this benefits him the most.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point because he's definitely lurking. And I think, by the time we get to like next year, 2023, when the presidential campaign would have been, would have commenced by then, I think Ron DeSantis, unless something happens, and it could, will may end up being the party's nominee, and giving Trump a run for his money. Um, so that's a great point. The January 6th hearings probably politically benefit him the most, especially where GOP folks are concerned. But I'm glad to hear and glad to know that a lot of people are tuning in and watching what's going on with these hearings. Now, day one of the hearings, and we can't, get into all of it. But day one of the hearings, the committee just sort of presented a general case against Trump, just kind of laid out, sort of almost like an opening statement, if you will. You and I know that the opening statement is very, very, very important. And that's, is what it felt like to me they were doing. This is what we're going to show you. This is what the evidence is going to say. The evidence is going to prove that this man is guilty of you know attempting to overthrow our country. Um, like I indicated earlier, some of the more prominent folks to testify day one of the hearing were Bill Barr, his Trump's former AG, and of course his daughter. I mean, that stands out to me. His daughter in a deposition said that I respect and believe what Bill Barr said. And Bill Barr said there was no election fraud, that my father lost, basically. I basically believe Bill Barr, don't believe my dad. I mean, that is huge. I think maybe because I'm your father, have a daughter, I would just want to live in such a way that you could believe in what I say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the fact that, like we said earlier, Ivanka Trump publicly showed so much loyalty to her dad. And then in this deposition, which for people who don't know, are proceedings outside of court where an attorney will ask a witness a question, and the witness must answer truthfully. It's the same as testifying. It's just that they're outside of court. So in that deposition under oath, she said that she believed Bill Barr. And to me, that just goes to show that they'll say one thing to the public to rile up their base to get to fundraise to get people on their side, but they know the truth. And when push comes to shove, to save them, so they're not held in contempt or lying under oath, then they'll say, okay, yes, well, I agree with Attorney General Barr that my father lost the vote. So it just goes to show what they say politically out front to their followers is completely different than what they'll say in court under oath, which is President Trump, former President Trump, lost the 2020 election.
Yeah, that's right. And so, yeah, that was a pretty important moment. I looked at that moment and it really struck me. But also, the committee put forth evidence showing that the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers felt like they were sort of commissioned by Trump to achieve his mission of stopping the election, even if it included or it required that they murder Mike Pence. And from what I read, they felt commissioned to do this because of something Trump said in one of his debates with Joe Biden. Do you recall him saying to the Proud Boys, he was pushed, to show that he did not support white supremacist groups, and so he said to the Proud Boys, "Stand down and stand by."
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Yeah. So they said, according to the article I read, they said that to them meant that when he was ready for us, he would call upon us. And so when he called upon people to come to DC and to, be strong and take back your country and all of that, they felt like it was their personal mission from the president. So the January 6th committee put forth evidence showing that these folks, took very seriously what Trump said.
I think that's very effective because it shows that the amount of persuasion that Trump has over his followers, and that his words um, lead to violence and did lead to violence on January 6th, and that the Proud Boys took it to heart what he said in that debate that was nationally televised, a debate to become president for a second term, and he told the Proud Boys to, what is it, stand by and stand up, whatever the words were.
Yeah, he said stand down, which means chill out for now, and stand by. In other words, I
Stand by.
will be in touch. Stand down and stand by.
And we saw that he was on January 6th.
Exactly.
So I think that that's pretty persuasive evidence as well to show Trump's involvement and his influence over his followers.
All right. So day 2 of the hearings, sort of the knockout punch, or the thing that stands out to me, was when I heard Bill Barr say in his deposition that Trump was essentially detached from reality, that there was no evidence supporting Trump's lie that the election had been stolen from him. The Department of Justice had done their investigation and had, sort of scoured the nation to see if there was any truth to it. And Bill Barr, former AG, said it's not. And, he and Trump got into a back and forth, a pretty steamy back and forth from what I understand. And he characterized Trump's mindset as being someone who seemed to be detached from reality. Now, again, this is coming from Bill Barr, his good friend and former Attorney General, who had been very loyal up to that point.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all to hear Trump being described as detached from reality. Um, I think that because of the way that Trump views himself, from the way that people describe him, it was probably unimaginable in his head that he lost the election. There's no way. He it's so believable that he would not be able to realize the truth, and what reality is that the American people went out and he actually lost. But
Yeah.
what is unfortunate too is that his this detachment from reality then inspired a bunch of people to go storm the Capitol. So it's not just affecting him personally. This view that he has in his head then influences people and causes a violent insurrection at the Capitol.
Yes. Um, Absolutely. And sadly, his detachment from reality, is not really appreciated by the folks who are following him. You remember Trump said infamously that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they still would support him?
Yep.
Well, he knows it doesn't matter to his followers what his character is, what his morality is, what he does, how big and bad he lies. That doesn't matter to his followers because, as I've heard others say, including my wife, their relationship tends to be transactional, meaning, there's a transaction. What Trump wanted from them was the presidency. What they wanted from Trump, I think, largely were the three conservative justices that they got. And so as long as everybody was delivering, then everybody would overlook, their the other person's flaws and so on, shortcomings. You're meeting you're doing what you said you would do. We're doing what we said we're going to do, and everybody's happy.
Yep.
So
And
he knew he had their support no matter what he did or said.
yeah.
And yeah,
And he knew being the anti-Obama will work as well. I believe if there was no Obama, there would be no Trump.
very true.
If there was no Obama, Trump, there would be no Trump. Trump is the manifestation of the reaction of um, white supremacists who did not want Obama in office for 8 years, who were festering for 8 years, laying low, not saying too much during the Obama presidency, but underneath the ground making waves. And then Trump goes, and Trump is that manifestation of, no, we have to take our country back, make
That's right.
America great again.
Yeah, white Americans, especially conservative whites, have been fearful for some time of losing control and power, the government. They've been very fearful of that. And you're right, Obama's election and reelection just sent waves through white America. And they begin at that point to say we've got to stand up and basically take back our country. Period. And Obama's election and reelection drove that point home. And so there's been just this great amount of fear from white conservatives. White evangelicals are, and in fact, in many ways, they're leading the cause. They bring that religious fervor, and anytime you got the preachers and the clergy and the theologians rubber stamping everything you do, and then using scripture to say that it's God, that's a lot of wind beneath your wings. I mean,
Yeah.
so they are the ones who gave the prophecies and so on that Trump would be reelected, and of course that was not right. Um, so yeah, it's very transactional between them and his followers, and the problem is Trump is very, very popular with rank and file Republicans, and that got the establishment GOP, the establishment Republican, um, sort of in a quagmire because they know if they go against Trump, there's a good chance they won't get reelected.
Mm, yeah. He has quite a hold on that on the party.
Yes, he still does. Um, it seems to be breaking a little bit, but he still does. Now, the two people on the screen now are Bill Stapien, who was Trump's campaign manager, and Jason Miller, one of his political advisors. And Jason, especially, was someone who was always out front, um, defending everything that Trump did. And that's why, these people coming out now, by the way, thank you, the political scientists, for tuning in, and good evening to you as well.
Thank you.
That's why some of these people coming out now and, scapegoating Trump, it doesn't have, to me, a lot of impact because they stood there throughout both of his impeachments and said nothing. We could have potentially stopped this before it even happened had they done the right thing during Trump's impeachment. But no, they covered him, they enabled him. And so now that the crazy has just gone too crazy for them and they're facing, potentially federal indictments and federal charges and all that, now they come out, you kind of take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I mean, if they truly cared, then they would have done something even before then, before being subpoenaed, before all of the media attention about what actually happened. So, it's I guess it's okay that they're coming down because they were subpoenaed. But it goes to show what their character is, that they didn't, one, try to do more to stop him, and then two, work in conjunction with the committee to try to stop Trump in his tracks, and do this investigation so that something can be done. And that leads me to that. Some people may be watching or may watch this later, especially Black Americans, and think, why should we care about this? I
Yes.
mean, what does it matter? My gas is up to $6. Food inflation. We talked about that last week. You did a excellent program with Shonda Rowe, which I highly encourage everyone to go watch.
Yes.
So why care? You should care because there should not be two systems that holds Black people and white people separately. Um, and Trump needs to be held accountable, to show that there is not two legal systems, criminal systems in this country, where Black people are held to a higher standard than white people. And, Trump, as the former president, if he committed these acts and he was a participant in the January 6th insurrection or influenced them, as we see in that he has been, he should be held to the highest extent of the law, period. And that goes to show, because we see every day as criminal defense attorneys, that we see every day how regular Black Americans, they're prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law without any consideration of any mitigating circumstances, any background, not having the connections that President Trump has. So that's why you should care if you're listening to this and thinking those thoughts.
Excellent. Thank you for saying that and bringing that out, because you're right. As lawyers who do criminal defense work, it is just distressing to see how prosecutors will hold our clients' feet to the fire. I mean, boy, you got to go in there and you got to beg, you got to plead, you got to throw everything at them to try and get your clients a break. Oftentimes, it's not true with all prosecutors, but most of them, yes. But here, Trump and his crowd are being treated completely different.
Yep.
And as a criminal defense attorney, I don't really, quite frankly, like to see the system, just just trouncing on people. Even Trump, even. But in this case, given the existential threat that this that he poses to the country, I do think it is absolutely essential that he's held accountable. Forget that I'm a criminal defense lawyer, because again, on that side of me, um, I we have to find redeeming qualities about our clients all the time, even when they've done bad things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's also consistent with our faith as Christians. I mean, Jesus loves us all. He forgives us, and will His grace, covers a multitude of sin in all of our lives,
Yep.
including Trump and so on. So we get that. But on the natural side of things, if he and his followers are not held accountable, and by the way, a lot of the folks who followed him into the Capitol, went in the Capitol based on what he said, a lot of those people are being prosecuted.
Yeah, they
But
are.
the ones who the person who may get away with all of this is Trump. So let me ask you this: do you think that? And by the way, before I ask that question, Bill Stepien and Jason Miller were some of the people around Trump who were telling him, this is what the second day kind of brought out of the hearings, that people around Trump, just about everyone around him, were telling him, you lost. You
Mm.
lost. Even his most fierce supporters were trying to tell him, you lost. This is not factual. This is not accurate. Except for this guy. Except for old Rudy Giuliani. Rudy was out front telling everybody, no, he didn't lose. He didn't lose. There was Martians from Mars, and the Italians did something to the voting machines. The company, Dominion had it rigged. The Dominion voting machine. People were stealing votes and giving them to the Democrats. All this stuff that were heard, Chloe, in court. 61 courts heard all these arguments. Trump had his day in court. And many of the people that he actually nominated are people who voted for him. Republicans who wanted him in office said, no, there is no there. But Giuliani, he kept pushing it. He kept pushing it. And now here's my question for you, Chloe, before I forget it. You said that Trump should be held to the highest level of the law. Do you actually think that do you believe Merrick Garland will even present this to a grand jury, a federal grand jury, and try and get Trump indicted?
I don't. Not based on the way Merrick Garland has handled the Justice Department so far. I've been a little bit disappointed with Mr. Garland, Attorney General Garland. He has not gone as far as I think he should, especially for being a former Obama Supreme Court nominee. We all know that Mitch McConnell, stopped his appointment in its progress, but he hasn't done enough, in my opinion, from what I've seen, to really hold Trump accountable and others of his ilk for what they've done to dial back civil rights in this country, for the January 6th insurrection, etc. So I don't, but there are district attorneys in Georgia, in New York, that are bringing, or apparently are bringing evidence, gathering evidence, investigating. So he may be held, President Trump may be held criminally. He may be prosecuted criminally in those states, in
Well,
Georgia or in New York.
New York is just a civil case. Um,
Oh, it's just a,
yeah, it's just a civil case. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office were considering criminal charges, but the DA, you sort of dropped. From what I understand, he kind of dropped the case.
oh wow. Well, then I believe that Merrick Garland will probably follow in those footsteps. But I do think that I think it's the Fulton County and I could be wrong, but
It is. I think it's the Fulton County DA's office in Atlanta.
yeah, I think they may be still pursuing federal, I mean, not criminal charges against President Trump. I
Yeah.
read something recently where the DA back in May of this year said that she was re-upping her investigation into him. So he may be held criminally on the state level, but not the federal level.
Yeah. Um, let's acknowledge some of the folks who are chiming in on Facebook. Um, Sister Ave, she says that, yeah, she says that says a lot to see Liz as a as a moderate. But Democrats would be wise to vote for her. I completely agree.
Yes.
Um, and Also, my good brother Barry Jenkins says that part and truth. And he said, lock him up, lock him up. You know, your mom, my lovely wife, says there should be no one above the law. And, your mom has really kind of held my feet to the fire in the sense of, when I went to law school, man, I just really drunk the Kool-Aid. I mean, I drunk the Kool-Aid. I can remember learning in con law. No man. Our country is a country of laws, not men. No man is above the law. All of that stuff. And she says, okay, you remember all that stuff you used to tell me and and how the American legal system is this and that, is the greatest in the world, blah, 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 blah. Well, what you think now? And, I still think it's the greatest legal system in the world, but there are two systems. We see it right in our faces. I mean, we
Yep.
knew it, but we're seeing it on a big scale. This is injustice. This is injustice.
Yeah. It's a representation of the two systems that we have in this country. Just like you said, on a large national scale for millions of people to see. I just hope that their eyes are open and they truly see it.
Me too. I'm reminded of something Brian Stevenson, the famed civil rights attorney, who I believe is our generation's Thurgood Marshall, quite frankly. Mr. Stevenson says that it's better in this country to be poor and white than to be rich and black, where the
Mm,
criminal justice system is concerned.
wow. That's yeah.
All right, so day 3 of the hearings was all about Mike Pence. And the committee just really brought out this hang Mike Pence thing and how his life was literally in jeopardy. They were not trying to get to Mike Pence to try to convince him to do the right thing. There was essentially a hit out on the vice president.
Mhm.
And it came out that, Trump said something to the effect of, well, the people got it right. I mean, if they think Mike Pence needs to be killed, they got it right. Maybe he deserves it. You know. So I mean, that just leaves you speechless for the president to say that about anybody, and especially about the vice president. I mean, that's unfitness, right? I mean, that's just unfitness to be in office.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, for him to say that about his own vice president, the person that he chose. But I have read reports that there have been tensions between President Trump and former President Trump and former Vice President Mike Pence. Mike Pence, I believe, has some of the same ultra conservative views, but he's more polished with it. He's smoother. He's one of those old school type ultra conservative. slash potentially, I'm gonna just stick with conservative, versus President Trump, who's more bombastic with it, who just comes right out with it. So I think that there was a lot of tension
I don't
between
even
them.
believe Trump is a true conservative, to be honest with you.
Yeah, true. I think he's an opportunist. He's an opportunist. He's power hungry. He wants to be at the top. But in
And money
terms of being
hungry.
a, yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, I really don't. I don't see. I just don't see that. I see someone who just loves money, loves power, loves fame, loves himself.
Yeah. Yep.
And so they even had out there this gallows. To is that the right name for that?
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, a gallows. So they were literally intending on, killing him. I don't know if they were going to use this. I don't know if this was symbolic or what. But they were very angry and were intending on taking him out. And had they done so, this is Pence and Nancy Pelosi who were he certifying the election. This is what they were trying to stop.
Yeah.
Okay, the counting of the electors and him banging the gavel, certifying Biden's victory. This is what they were trying to stop right here. This is where, had they gotten to him before he was able to do this, then Trump would have stayed in office, at least temporarily, and our country would have never, ever, ever been the same.
But what they don't realize is that they would have made Speaker Pelosi even closer to potentially being president.
Well, that's true. Because she's next in line behind the vice president, right?
Right.
That's true. Yeah, no one said this crowd is smart.
True that.
All right, day 4. This day was dedicated to all that Trump did in Georgia. Speaking, like you said, the DA down in Fulton County is investigating him now. I don't know what will come out of it, but he really applied a great deal of pressure to those folks down there who are his supporters. I mean, the governor, the Secretary of State. I mean, these are Trump's people, but they had enough integrity to say, no, you did not win here. You were beat by a large margin. And the Secretary of State famously said, or Trump infamously said to the Secretary of State, which is a recorded call, I just want to find 11,780 votes. So basically, go find me 11,800 and how many? 11,780 votes. Go find me those votes. And they said, no, we cannot do that. You lost. And I think they counted everything down there 3 times.
Mm. Did Trump not realize they were probably going to be recording that call? Like,
again, this is not a smart crowd. But he doesn't care either. I mean, what does he care? So what? That wasn't me. That's not my voice.
That's not me. Yeah, his strategy is deny, 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 deny.
Exactly. And then I tell you, watching the testimony of this woman and her mom, all the stuff that they went through as Georgia election workers, and Trump calling them out. I mean, literally putting out their names and phone numbers and so forth. Yet they stood strong for our democracy. These are sheroes, and they should not have had to go through what they went through just doing their jobs.
They need to be. Biden just put out his list of recipients who are going to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He needs to give two of them to them
I agree. Yes.
for standing strong, for standing for democracy, for standing for free elections, all of that.
Yes, her mother, the woman in the red dress sitting behind her, says now she can't even use her name anymore
Mm,
because of death threats. She said the FBI told her you need to leave your home because, um, people are out here who want to kill you.
mm.
They know where you are. Trump gave your name, your address. Isn't that shameful?
It's
Okay.
horrendous.
All right. All right. Day 5. This had to do with the Department of Justice and the pressure that Trump put on the DOJ. Barr had left, and yet Trump was trying to get his own guy in that seat because the dude that replaced Barr, I think his name was Rosen, was unwilling to do what Trump wanted, which was to basically, in fact, Trump said to the DOJ, said, just tell them the election was corrupt and then leave the rest to us. Yeah, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman.
Mm.
So we'll get out here. If you say it's corrupt, that's all you. I know it's not true. I mean, you know it's not true. It doesn't need to be true. You just need to say it. If you say it, we'll stand on that lie, and we will fight. We'll have something to fight with. But we need you to do it now. If you don't want to do it, or if you can't do it, we got somebody who will, and that's this guy, the one with the Department of Justice sign behind him, Jeff Clark, who was who is an environmental lawyer, didn't have any prosecutorial background, but Trump was going to make him the attorney general. And the other guy is the guy who brought him to Trump, saying, this is the guy. This is a congressman out of Pennsylvania, Perry, Representative Perry, who reportedly told Trump, Jeff Clark is your man. He will say it's corrupt. He'll do whatever you tell him. This is the guy you need to replace Rosen with. And reportedly, according to the hearings, Trump asked Rosen, what will you do if I, try to replace you? And he said, me and many others will resign immediately. There will be a revolt in the Department of Justice if you try to replace me with Mr. Clark. So they stood up as well.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, these people are heroes. They saved our democracy.
Because right after the insurrection and the attacks, it seems like no one really stood up to Trump. I know that the Georgia Secretary of State had, because the phone call was released. But it's good to hear that Rosen and others stood up to him and said, "You can't do this. You can't do this." Actually, I take that back, because the courts did. He presented his case, like we said earlier, to 66 judges, and every single one of them rejected his claims that the election was stolen. So there were people that stood up in the court system, and it's good to hear that there were others too.
Yes, yes. Sister Maddie Hall, a precious, dear sister and Christian, she says, Lord, have mercy on these people with such evil hearts. They are blind to the truth. Lord, help us all. Please help us. No good comes from evil. I ditto those comments.
Amen.
And we, as Christians, we are Christian lawyers. we do want God to have mercy on those who do evil and have mercy on all of us for that fact. So I ditto that so much. Very good. So he said to them, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. All right. This brings us to day 6, which just happened. And it was perhaps the biggest day of testimony. This young woman, Cassidy Hutchinson, testified under oath, and she brought the house down, Chloe. She brought the house down. She brought the house down. She
did.
was a former aide to Mark Meadows, who is who was Trump's chief of staff. And if you remember, Trump had several chiefs of staff, several. Mark Meadows ended up in the job. And I remember Mick Mulvaney was one of the chiefs of staff, and I think there was another one. But anyway, this young woman, I think she's like 26 years old or so. She has sterling conservative bona fides. I mean, she is a conservative loyalist. And she worked for Ted Cruz, I understand. So she this is not a liberal. This is a conservative saying these things. And one of the most probably damning thing that she said was she, Trump was told that the people were armed, that they had guns, and Trump said something to the effect of, well, they're not here to hurt me. And so let them in and remove security, okay? And if they're trying to hurt Mike Pence, then maybe that's what he needs. The people, they know best. And she also said that she overheard from a Secret Service officer that when they told Trump they were not going to take him to the Capitol to be down there with his people, that Trump became almost uncontrollably angry. And she says that he lunged at the Secret Service and tried to grab the steering wheel or something. Now, some of the Secret Service folks are denying that it went that far, but I don't think there's been any denial that he was extremely upset and about not going there. So anyway, the issue here is the temperament of Trump. I mean, I read on Twitter, and I so agree, someone who's throwing hamburgers and ketchup on the wall should not have the nuclear football at his disposal.
Yeah.
Look, comedy, but very true.
Yeah. You can tell she was a star witness because she was attacked almost immediately by a lot of Trump supporters and loyalists. And one of the things that they used to attack her was saying where her testimony was a lot of hearsay. And for people who don't know, hearsay is an statement that is made out of court, out of a legal proceeding, that is made for the truth of the matter that it is asserted for. So in her testimony, the portion that I saw, she did, quote other individuals that she heard, said different things. And so the Republicans and Trump supporters were saying, well, this is all based on hearsay. This should not have even come in her testimony. But I did hear some supporters of the January 6th committee says, well, they allowed those statements to come in, not because she was trying to, for the truth of the matter asserted, like these statements are true, but to show, Trump's temperament, like you just said, or to show give a context of when the conversation took place, and for other exceptions versus truth of the matter asserted. And that is in court. A hearsay statement can come in if it's not asserted for the truth of the matter asserted. It can come in to show the motive of the other person who said the statement, or to show um, any potential bias by the other person. So I just wanted to bring
State
that
of
up.
mind,
Hmm?
state of mind,
State of mind, intent,
motive, intent,
all of
knowledge.
that.
Yes. And it also, I've heard people say that, but um, being a lawyer, I know that that's not going to carry water, that the statements were made outside of court, because there are exceptions, as you were just saying. And another exception to the hearsay rule is if a statement is made by a party opponent. So if this were to become a civil matter, or and she says she heard Trump say these things, then that's an admission on his part, and admissions are accepted from the hearsay rule,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So now, if she was quoting something somebody else said to her, well, now you got, potentially double hearsay. And that may be a little bit more difficult. But if she heard this with her own ears, then in addition to the exceptions that you raise, another one would probably be that this is an admission on his part, and it should be an exception to the hearsay rule.
Yeah. So her testimony, I mean,
And I don't even know if the rules of evidence would apply to this kind of committee hearing. Also, I'm not certain.
yeah, that was my thought too. But I just saw a bunch of opponents of these hearings just try to bring that up to disqualify her testimony.
And it was
Uh,
brought out here recently, I think maybe yesterday, that Mark Meadows reached out to her after they found out she was going to give a deposition. Reached out to her and said, essentially, um, someone wants you to know that, um, he knows you're loyal, and he knows you're going to tell the truth, and he reads transcripts, and he's counting on you. Someone just wants you to know that. So I'm calling to let you know that someone is watching and listening and expecting you to. Now, why isn't that witness tampering? Why isn't that um, trying to coerce a witness, influence a witness, intimidate a witness?
all of
So,
that.
yeah, so you talk about two systems. Anyone else who does this would potentially be facing a witness tampering charge.
Yep.
So it seems to me the DOJ just got a lot of stuff from this January 6th hearing, these hearings, to work with.
I agree. And after this, the I want to say the committee itself is recommending that the DOJ bring charges. So we'll see what Merrick Garland says and does in the upcoming weeks and months following these hearings.
All right, we got a question from Barry Jenkins. He asks, is it possible to pass legislation that requires a psych eval as a prerequisite to a run for any federal office? Well, the answer to that question is yes. It is possible for Congress to pass that type of legislation. But the second question is whether or not that legislation would pass constitutional muster. And I don't know. And it raises a lot of questions. Another question is, states kind of control the election process in a large way, even federal elections. Um, so because states determine And this is a great segue into our next section here, and I want to get into it, and that is the fact that we have an extremely conservative court. We don't have, just a majority conservative court. We have a supermajority conservative court, which means they can get done absolutely anything they want done. Even if one of them break ranks, there's still 5 left to give them a 5-4 majority. And Chloe, I think you're going to give us some reasons why, therefore, the court should be expanded, right? Why more folks should be on this court. And I agree. I just came to that thinking here over the past couple of days in light of some cases that have come out. But yes, I would agree with that. Now, let me speak on this photo. This photo, I superimposed Justice Jackson here in place of Stephen Breyer because I don't think there's an official photo out just yet which shows her standing. She would be actually standing as the newest member, and Sotomayor would take Justice Breyer's seat right beside the Chief Justice, and Kavanaugh would then take a seat, take Sotomayor's seat, and Justice Jackson would be standing back there where Justice Barrett is now standing, and that photo should come out here in a few weeks. But yes, Brother Barry, Congress has the authority to enact whatever legislation it wants to, but the U.S. Supreme Court has the authority to strike down any law that Congress passes, pursuant to a very, very old case, Marbury versus Madison, where the court said that it determines what the law is. And whether they would uphold such a law, I don't know. This court is such a political animal, with all due respect, that if it's not good for the GOP, they probably would strike it down. And like I said, even federal elections are largely controlled by states because they decide, how many representatives based on census material information. They decide the maps, the voting maps. So they kind of send to DC who, gets elected based on state law in many ways.
Yeah, it's time for Congress to expand the number of justices on the Supreme Court. Um, you know, the past week or two, we've seen the type of opinions that the Supreme Court has brought forth, and we're focused on the Miranda warnings, um, voting rights legislation that can come in front of the court, racial gerrymandering, racial discrimination, police brutality cases. All of these rights and legislation can be overturned because of the super conservative majority that is on the court now. There is a 6 conservative majority on the court and only 3 left leaning justices. And the Constitution doesn't even say that there only must be 9 justices on the Supreme Court. Article 3 of the Constitution gives a lot of discretion and latitude to Congress to determine how many justices can sit on the Supreme Court. And it's only because of an act back in 1869, where a lot of the issues come with our country, in the mid 1800s, that put 9 justices on the Supreme Court. So we haven't had a change for almost 200 years, even though Congress can do it. And because of the rights that are being stripped away from American citizens, from Black people, because of the legislation that can be can be stripped down. For example, today is the 58th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was landmarked legislation that gave us greater voting rights and rights in this country. But with this conservative majority, even that landmark legislation, it can be overturned and stripped down. So we must expand the court now. I believe we need to have a more even Supreme Court between conservatives and liberals on the court. I think it needs to be expanded to 12 justices and have it six conservative, six liberal. And then if there is if it's not split equally, then one side has to come over to the other side to make that decision. But I don't think this having a odd number of justices does good for black people and other types of legislation in this country. So what I want people to know mainly is that 9 justices on the Supreme Court is not set in stone. Congress can set how many Supreme Court justices that it wants, whether it be 13, whether it be 50. Um, if and the way the makeup of the court is now, this is going to influence a generation of civil rights for the next 30, 40, 50 years. I read an article that said that with the newest Supreme Court, or the former newest Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, if she stays on the Supreme Court as long as RBG did, she'll be on the Supreme Court until 2059. I mean, wow. That's what, 30 years that she'll be influencing a generation of people. So it's just time to expand the Supreme Court. We need a more even split on the Supreme Court so that our constitutional rights can no longer be stripped down. I mean, we need to keep legislation in place that protects us. It's time to change it.
That's an impassioned and informed opinion. And I really hear you too as a millennial. You as a millennial, not me. Because you're right. These 6 people here, I think Thomas being the oldest of the bunch, will be around, for practically all your life. And they'll be making decisions that will impact your life. And obviously they have a political agenda. Now, I want to bring it home a little more. Because we're focused on how things affect Black Americans. And Chloe, you went down a list of things, Civil Rights Act. And thank you for pointing out that today is the anniversary of the all-important Civil Rights Act. Now, listen to me, you all. Listen, 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 listen. If the Civil Rights Act, if this super majority conservative court strikes down the Civil Rights Act, white business owners would be able to tell us once again that we cannot frequent their restaurants, their hotels. We will essentially be back on the chicken circuit, the Chitlin circuit. You know what the Chitlin circuit is? The Chitlin circuit, you probably don't know what it is either, Chloe. Do you?
I've heard of it.
Okay, the Chitlin circuit is when the R&B soul singers back in the day, the jazz, black blues singers would be on the road going from city to city. They couldn't stay in the white hotels. So they had to stay, at somebody's house or some older hotel that was owned by African Americans, or sleep in the car, the buses. It's called the Chitlin circuit. Well, the only reason why the owners of Chili's, the owners of you name them, the owners of Red Lobster, the owners whom I presume are all white, the owners of any of these places, The only reason they can't say to us, no blacks allowed, is because of the Civil Rights Act. That's it. Our rights are literally protected because of laws that are on the books. This conservative majority are hostile to civil rights, including Clarence Thomas. Maybe for different reasons, but he has shown a lot of hostility to civil rights as well. So with the stroke of a pen, all conservatives got to do is get a case involving the civil rights in front of this 6 conservative majority, and they could strike it down and have tremendous impact on our lives. The Voting Rights Act, the same thing. There's a case that was just released with all these other cases this past week. I think it may have just been an order where the Louisiana legislature redid the voting map in Louisiana, leaving only one predominantly black voting district out of 6. And it's very, very incongruent with the population in Louisiana, because 30% of Louisiana's population is black. Yet only one voting district, based on maps drawn by the Louisiana legislature, which is GOP controlled, is predominantly black. So they were sued, got in front of the Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court said, this court, the 6 supermajority said, it's okay. It's okay to have a map in a state that's 30% black. It's okay to have a map where there's only one predominantly black voting district, which means the other 5 will likely have white conservative politicians. So the people that blacks in Louisiana feel like would best represent them, they will not be able to have those people representing them, because the United States Supreme Court feels that it's okay, feels that it's not unconstitutional racial gerrymandering to have that one predominantly voting black district. So states around the country will now know that we can now, in fact, Ron DeSantis, speaking of DeSantis, he did that in Florida. So now they know with this supermajority at the U.S. Supreme Court, they can draw the maps the way they want to, and this court will likely uphold them. Now, why is that able to happen? That's able to happen because in 2012, the United States Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, which would have required Louisiana to get pre-clearance from the Justice Department before it made any changes to its voting laws. So getting rid of the gutting the Voting Rights Act the way they did back in 2012, and then did further damage to the Voting Rights Act last year, 2020, or was it Bravanovich? That was 2022? It was either 2022 or 2021, where they then came back in an opinion written by Sam Alito and gutted Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So now these states all around the country can do whatever they want to do that will negatively impact black voting rights. Fair housing, affirmative action is all but dead. It's all but dead already. It will be killed definitely here in a little bit. There is an affirmative action case regarding college admissions that's on deck for this court to consider. One has to do with Harvard Harvard University. I think Justice Ketanji Jackson agreed that since she's a Harvard grad, she's going to sit it out. And then there's another one, environmental racism. I mean, that is really big because if you go in most black communities, Chloe, you go into a city and the landfills and the dumps and all of that stuff are typically in the black community. And this court just recently said that the EPA has to basically get permission before it issues any kind of regulations. So anything done to try and control climate change, bad emissions, where the landfills go, where all that, they first got to get approval from Congress. Well, good luck on that because Congress can't get hardly anything done, right? Education. There are education policies that would benefit African Americans that this court can't wait to sink its teeth in. This conservative supermajority court will have a very deleterious effect and impact on Black Americans for years to come. Mark my word. Elections have consequences. So when people are sitting back asking, why am I going to vote? Why am I going to go through the trouble of voting? The Democrats aren't doing any good for me. The Republicans, sure enough, ain't doing any good for me. I'm going to sit it out. This doesn't really impact my life. That is the biggest lie. That's what they want you to think. You are very, 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 very mistaken. Because if you don't vote, you give them the opportunity to put these people on the federal bench on the U.S. Supreme Court. You give them the opportunity to control Congress, and these folks are not friends of African Americans. They will pass laws, policies, regulations, and so on that will benefit them and that will be disadvantageous to us. Yeah. So these are just some reasons why Black Americans should be really concerned about SCOTUS.
And in addition to that, with elections having consequences, President Biden won the presidency. President Trump won the presidency in 2016. He did not win by the popular vote. He won by the Electoral College. So he became president without winning, the vote of the people. And then he was able to nominate these 3 Supreme Court justices that are going to sit on our court, the highest court of the land, for the next 30, 40, 50 years and have all of this impact on this country that will be detrimental to African Americans. So look, I understand the frustration with politics with both parties. I'm frustrated with both parties. The Republicans, I'm definitely frustrated with. I'm frustrated with the Democrats, with the way that they're handling things as well. I'm frustrated with President Biden. However, I recognize that to protect Black Americans, to protect our rights, what my dad just went through, we need politicians who are going to put justice-minded judges on the federal bench and to the Supreme Court. And in this case, is the Democrats. So that stops me from, allowing my frustrations to allow me to sit out and not vote for president. And another thing, what people don't realize is that federal judges, once they're on the bench, they're on the bench for life. And they can only be removed through impeachment by the House of Representatives, and you got to be convicted in the Senate and all of this. So President Trump, he was able to put, hundreds of these conservative, not justice-minded judges on the bench, on the federal benches, who are going to sit there for life and make decisions that impacts Black Americans negatively. That's the federal level. And then when you get up even to the Supreme Court, he was able to put 3. So, even though, as Black people, I've heard a lot of Black people say we're frustrated with the Democrats. I wish there was I wish there was more than a 2-party system. I wish there was a multiple party system. But in order to protect ourselves, our best bet, especially with these federal judges and the Supreme Court, is to elect Democrats who will promise to elect judges that will keep intact the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, fair housing, affirmative action, reparations, environmental racism, police brutality reform, all of that.
Yes, I
So
forgot to put police brutality up here,
yeah,
but absolutely the court, this Miranda opinion that you mentioned, now makes it harder, in fact, impossible to sue a police officer who doesn't Mirandize you in civil court. And one last thing before we move on, the Brown versus Board of Education decision. This court is going to go after Brown. I promise you. I guarantee you. And why is that consequential? Because Brown was the case that over that set aside the separate but equal doctrine in Plessy v. Ferguson. Plessy v. Ferguson was a case that basically said blacks could be separated out from the rest of society so long as their facilities were equal. They got the separate part right, but they never did live up to the equal. So we went to school in dilapidated schools. Our facility, our books were second-handed books. So basically, Plessy v. Ferguson, the separate but equal doctrine was horrible. It was the Brown versus Board of Education decision that overturned the separate but equal doctrine. And that's when black and white students started attending school together. Now, why is that important? It's not important necessarily that black kids be sitting beside white kids and something magical is going to happen to our children because they're now in the classroom with white kids. No, it's not that. It's, as I said before, our facilities were unequal. They didn't get the funding that the white schools got. So our kids were not getting the proper education. And so by integrating the school system, our kids were now able to sit in schools with air conditions, first with good books, nice facilities. I remember when the schools integrated. I was in third grade. I remember I was attending C.W. Dobbins, a black principal. My elementary school was named in his honor. It was a black elementary school. I went there first grade and second grade. My third grade year, we were transferred to Wallace Elementary, the white school, and we were bused there. I remember this in my lifetime. And the schools were like night and day in terms of the resources, the facilities. So that's why Brown is so important. It mandated that black kids get, ideally, the same education, have the same access to the same resources in school as white kids. This court is hostile to Brown. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Gorsuch, neither of them went on the record as saying Brown is settled law. They refused to. And just about every other Trump nominee, federal nominee, refused to assert that Brown is settled law because they disagreed with it the whole time. And they're coming for it. And let me school you a little bit more here. The Roe v. Wade opinion that was just overturned. Let me school you here. When Brown was handed down in 54, Brown 1 was handed down in 54, Brown 2 was handed down in 55. White conservatives had taken a big loss with Brown. And so they began to surmise, how are we going to protect our rights? And they came up with the bright idea that they needed to pack the federal judiciary. They needed to get more white conservative judges on federal benches because it was the federal judges who were handing down opinions that were favorable for black folks. State judges, a lot of the state judges were bigots and racists and white supremacists and KKK, and they were beholden to local prejudices and so on. But the federal judges who, as Chloe said, got appointments for life were less controlled by local prejudices, and they were the ones who tended to try to follow the Constitution. So it was federal courts that were helping us out when the state judges wouldn't. So white conservatives said, we need to go after the federal judiciary and not just focus on states' rights and states' judges and so on. But they needed a rallying cry. And the rallying cry that they selected was abortion. Before then, most white conservatives were pro-choice. The Southern Baptist Convention was on the record as being pro-choice. The shift came when the politicians and the conservatives said, this issue, abortion, is our rallying cry. This stirs up white, suburban, rural folks. And if we can use it to get them to embrace our agenda, we can ride that all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. This is what they did in the 50s. This is the strategy they came up with in the 50s. In other words, what I'm saying is they were never pro-life. The abortion issue was propaganda for them to use to gain control of the federal court system. They knew they could no longer continue to use segregation. Segregation, 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 now segregation forever was the rallying cry of Southern white politicians. Well, that was now caustic in light of Brown. That wasn't working anymore. Country was ready to move on. But the abortion issue gave them the rallying cry that they needed. And they rode it for the last 60 years, all the way to this supermajority. I'm trying to connect Roe with Brown. Now, for the record, I'm good that Roe was overturned because I'm truly pro-life. I am a social conservative. Okay, so there it is. I said it on the record. But I'm also very much pro-racial justice. And these folks have used the abortion issue to pack these courts when their real interest has always been reversing civil rights. So they use the abortion issue to get on the court. Right? They all sat there, Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, Gorsuch, they all sat in that chair in front of the Senate and said, Roe is settled law. Roe is settled law. Roe is settled law. Yet, when they got a case in front of them to overturn Roe, what did they do? They overturned Roe because they never were pro-life. It has always been about civil rights and black equality.
Yeah, you're right, Dad. They're not pro-life, they're pro-white life. They're pro, keeping white people on top, keeping white supremacy. If they were truly pro-life, then they would want education equality. They would want financial equality. They would want black people to have, for there to be one criminal justice system. They would want fair housing for all. They would want the Voting Rights Act to stay. They're pro-white life. And that is a lot of the issue that I have with the way that pro-lifers, and I know you're one, but the way that pro-lifers have framed the issue in general. Because if they were truly pro-life, they will focus on not only the unborn child, but they will also focus on the issues that I just went through.
That's right. We call it being pro-life from womb to tomb.
Yeah. So I can discuss my opinion all day. I'm not going to get into it here, but um, so yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Well, last of all, we've been up here a minute. That was really my monologue. Chloe and I are going to start doing a separate monologue each broadcast where we just rant for a few minutes on whatever topic we want to. That really was my rant. That was really my monologue. So I won't do it today. But I do want to say to everyone, please keep Brittany Griner in your prayers. She is being unjustly detained. I agree with our State Department who's come to that determination. Why do I say that? Because we don't know, first of all, that she has any that she really did have any CBD oil. We don't know that. This is the Russian government here. This is the same government who was bombing Ukraine and saying, we're not bombing Ukraine. You can't believe anything these people say. So it is very much doubtful that she had any kind of CBD oil. But let's say she did. Here, she would have been out of jail like 30 minutes after getting arrested. Because she'd have got a bond. Okay? And then, and even on the worst case scenarios, let's say she had no money to bond out, nothing, like she didn't have resources, any of that. And she spent 4 months in jail for some CBD oil. That would have been way more than time served. And under no state jurisdiction would CBD oil, unless she had a gallon, would subject her to a potential 10-year sentence. She is being unfairly detained. And we need to keep her in our prayers. We need to pressure Joe Biden to bring this young woman home. We shouldn't be concerned about what her sexual preference and orientation is. Just she's a human being. Can you imagine that being your daughter, your sister, what have you? She needs to come home. They need to release her, period. But we know that we're in a situation now that we're basically in a proxy war with Russia, and they're going to use her to get what they can get from our government. But anyway, please keep this woman in your prayer and the other folks who are being unlawfully detained in Russia. All right, I'm really done. That's it.
Free Brittany Griner. Bring her home. She needs to be home. And the focus needs to be on her. If she was a white American, I believe there would be a lot more focus and media attention on what's happening to her, and focusing on bringing her home even more. So
I agree.
I hope and pray that she comes home soon and stop being used as a pawn by Russia to try to get back at the United States. So free Brittany Griner. We stand behind her.
That's right. All right. So, Chloe, that is going to be the end of our show. I always enjoy being up here with you discussing these issues. Thank you to all of our subscribers. Please, you all, don't leave today's show, if you're on YouTube, without liking it. Go ahead and hit that like button. That helps us. That helps the YouTube algorithm promote our content. And if you think this is good content, help us get it out. Help us get it out. Please share this video, comment, tell your friends, tell your church. When you do church announcements, tell the church members. Check out the Defiant Lawyers on YouTube. Tell your sorority sisters. Tell your fraternity brothers. Tell everybody. Lottie Dottie, everybody about the Defiant Lawyers. The Defiant Lawyers.
And stay tuned next week. I'm doing a monologue on why the next president needs to be under 40 years old. So stay tuned for that. You don't want to miss that out. I'm making the case on why our next president needs to be under 40.
That I'm so looking forward to that. I really, really, really am looking forward to you talking to your generation about why the next president needs to be a young man or woman. Young man or woman, right?
Yes.
Of
Or
course.
woman.
Of
Young
course.
woman or man.
All right. So a little voice.
What y'all think about this?
Wow, that's funny.
Woo! Yeah, baby. I enjoyed it. Did you all enjoy it?
Woo! All right.
I was not expecting that whatsoever.
Oh, Lord. How was that? You like that?
That was good.
What about this one? What
Okay.
about this one? Hello, everybody. This is the Defiant Lawyers.
I feel like these YouTubers and stuff, they be putting that on their voice to make it sound like that.
Yeah. The political scientist says.
The political scientist says, peace to the Corbett's.
Thank you, political scientists, for wishing us peace. And peace to you. Oh, wow. This is just
Whenever
hilarious.
we read any comments, we need to read them in that voice.
Okay, we'll do it. Look, I can't, y'all don't know I'm silly at times. I can't be serious all the time. This stuff will freak you out if you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're getting ready to get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of
Like
here.
the video, guys. Like it, please. It helps us out tremendously to get these videos out.
Please. Like the video. Hit that like button. Everybody hit that like button.